after the Second World War. So it was a point when countries were quite poor, they were quite weak, and these countries came together for stability. So the UK eventually joined the EU on the 1st of January 1973, and from that point onwards it agreed to hold EU law as supreme. Now what that means basically is whatever is decided at a EU level or a supranational level, it becomes UK law and UK citizens follow it. So why did we join it? We came together as a means of sharing resources, becoming stronger, sharing responsibilities, and you've heard that saying before, it's often better being together.
Yeah, okay. So why now with this kerfuffle about leaving the Union when we share goods, we get the ability to travel, we get the ability to establish ourselves in different nations? Why now should we leave the EU? Why what's the big deal now with wanting to leave the EU?
Okay, well, first of all, obviously we live in a democracy, so therefore individuals have their rights and the ability to exercise those rights. So at this moment in time, we've got to a point where individuals are being heard. They are saying that they no longer, or some are saying, no longer want to be part of the union and they want to break away. The kerfuffle, as you call it, there is a population of individuals who possibly feel disenfranchised with the EU. They might not agree with its aims and objectives. They feel it's not working for them. They do not believe they get a benefit in their everyday lives from being a part of the EU. You just mentioned things like goods and services and jobs. And I believe that individuals who do not know about the benefits that we get through being part of the EU, the opportunities that young people have through being part of the EU, those individuals who do not know how the EU works might not be in the best place to say whether or not we should be leaving.
Okay, so just let me ask you a couple of basic questions, mainly stuff that applies to young people. Say for example, many of us like to go on holidays to Greece or Spain, France. You know, the Euros are now on, everybody wants to go over to France and catch the games. How would leaving the EU affect our ability to travel and go to these places?
Okay, so at the moment, UK citizens have the benefit of a free movement directive in which we can go to any of the member states in Europe for up to 3 months without a need to register ourselves in that country. So think about it. If I really wanted to, and I wanted to go on holiday to France, I could go there for up to 3 months, quite a long holiday. Yeah. So therefore, this free movement is an ability in which individuals can move in an unrestricted fashion throughout the other 27 member states. That's quite a big benefit and a freedom for individuals. And actually we call it a freedom, one of the main freedoms of the EU, to move around unrestricted. So as you mentioned, the ability to go and watch the Euros and move around. Yes, you can do that as an EU citizen if that is taken away and we are no longer recognised to have those free movement rights with the other member states. It would make it more difficult, and procedurally there'd be more administration to be able to move around.
Would there be possibly a cost as well to maybe travelling to these places, like an additional cost of an administrative fee, if you will, maybe?
Well, if you think about it, if you've got to now pay for a passport or even a visa to be issued, these potential costs would be seen as a reasonable cost. So several member states at the moment operate entry and exit with an identity card. That's rather simple to be able to get. UK citizens can move around those member states with a passport simply. If that was taken away and that expectation was taken away, yes, there would be more administrative formalities for someone outside the EU but in Europe than actually part of the EU.
Okay. Possibly dream of living in France or Italy, maybe even Belgium. You know, you want to live somewhere sunny. No one wants to live in the rainy UK forever.
Okay. What about then?
would you, as a, how would a non-EU national be able to know? No, what would be the implications of leaving the EU? Would you be able to set up home somewhere else? Say, if you weren't a member of the EU, how difficult would it be?
Well, at the moment, we have something called the Free Movement of Workers, which means that EU citizens are able to go and work in another EU member state to obviously contribute towards the economy of that member state, to be treated the same as nationals in that member state. We also have the ability for individuals to provide services and establish themselves in another member state. These are very generous freedoms in which UK citizens can go and explore the job market elsewhere. You think there are over 510 million people in the EU, and a lot of those are businesses who are looking for employees. And when you're looking for a job, why just think about the UK? You could also think about 27 other member states as well. So would it be harder? It would most certainly be more difficult. It would be impossible. But the requirements for you to go and live in another EU member state would have to be obviously more than what they are now. So at the moment, you could go and live as an EU citizen in another member state if you have sufficient funds to do so. Otherwise, a job to work there or to set your own business up. You would need to be able to live according to your salary, for example, in that member state. You would not be able to have immediate recourse to public funds.
That, like your Article 18 rights?
Yes, so Article 8 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union, Andre, as you know, talks about discrimination. And a member state is not allowed to treat an EU individual exercising any of those freedoms differently or in a disadvantageous way compared to other national citizens.
So what you're basically saying is that if we leave the EU, some of the rights of members of of nationals of that particular EU country, we couldn't have them.
Well, if you think about it, why would you be able to have similar sorts of rights as those who are part of a union, an agreement? So Article 50 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union, or Lisbon Treaty, provides that a member state can actually withdraw from the union in accord with its own constitutional rules. We have never had a country do this before. If the UK did this, it would be the first time. There is no precedent to follow. So we really don't know what it would look like with the UK leaving. The door is half open for a member state to do that, but we do still not know what it would look like to not be part of that EU.
Okay. Right. Just the last question. Personally, do you think that the UK would be better off without the EU?
Okay, Andre, that's a killer question. As you know, I've taught you EU law on your university degree.
Very good, you were, may I add.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you were a very good student as well.
Yeah.
You were very good. You've got paid, you can't afford me. Quite simply, no, I do not. As I mentioned earlier in the interview, I feel there is an identifiable population of individuals who are exercising their right, their voice, as they have the right to do so, in this referendum, who do not fully appreciate the benefits and responsibilities that the UK receives. I fully understand the discussions about hundreds of millions of pounds each week go out to the EU that could go towards the NHS, for example. I fully understand that. But equally, when all these member states join the EU, they do so with a particular set of responsibilities. And taking the benefits of having a free movement of goods, for example, of persons, there does come responsibilities for each individual member state to uphold those aims and objectives of the EU. I do not fully believe that everyone who will be voting in the referendum fully comprehends and understands that if you take benefits from, and I mean by benefits of movement, of capital.
Not the housing benefits.
No, not housing benefits. No, when you take the benefits, the good points, the pros of being part of the EU, you also have to share the tough times. And the tough times that we are seeing is the financial collapse of member states, for example. This migration, this migration of individuals. But equally, if we came together in the early 50s, or for the UK in the early 70s, in a state of solidarity, to support each other, do we want to lose sight of that now? Because things aren't as rosy as perhaps we would want at this moment in time. We've got to remember, we are looked up to in the EU.
Yeah.
We are one of the founding and I won't say most important, but a very important member state, and I would not want us to lose sight of that. But to think the other side, that if we do remain part of the EU and the government wants to renegotiate our terms of our membership, that would be something very different. We'll be the first member state doing that. But I do fully believe that we are better, that the young people of this country are better being part of the EU, being an EU citizen and not just a UK citizen.
Okay, and so what advice would you give to young people going out to vote?
Well, of course, I would advise them to vote. I would not advise them what to say or what to vote, but what I would advise them is find out more about the EU, what responsibilities each member state has to do, and then cast your vote. Do not just cast your vote on mass media or what we're being told based on immigration or benefits. Make a fully informed decision, and that is the most powerful decision you can make.
You heard it here, folks. Thank you, Doctor.
I mean, if you think about it, say for example, the free movement of goods, and a member state is not allowed to bring in any restrictions on imports or exports, that could be seen as protectionist. Say for example,
Commission in Ireland.
Okay, the UK, there were several of those cases. The UK was to bring in a measure about it insist on only 50,000 items coming to the UK from Belgium each year. That's what we call a quantitative restriction. So therefore, by reducing the volume, you are infringing EU law and the ability and the freedom for other member states to import and export. So I would have to have a pretty watertight reason for that restriction. So therefore, if we were to leave the EU, then arguably we would not be able to trade with 27 other countries on the same benefits that we have now. We all share a common customs tariff. If we move from the inside to the outside, then our being able to join the party is on very different terms. Arguably, some might say beneficial terms, I would say detrimental terms.
Because based on what I think is majorly most of the export goes to Germany, goes to like some of the big countries. So I think they can still have a trade deal with those countries. And the other ones that are really just there, sucking off the benefits of the big ones, they can, survive by themselves.
Okay, so when you say sucking off the benefits of the other ones, I assume by that you mean, say, for example, benefit tourists who allegedly go to other member states purely because they have a benefit system than other countries. Okay then, so should we make a decision based on the minority? I fully understand it's really impacting upon UK citizens. However, have UK citizens explored their EU freedoms? Arguably not, because in terms of other countries, a minority of our citizens go over to other EU member states. Perhaps we should be more mobile and think bigger, think more like an EU citizen, because arguably we're not only UK citizens, we're also EU nationals.
But you don't want to leave the big place to go to the small place to look for work. You don't want to leave where there's better life, where there's better road, there's better economy, to go to places where you get less. Like teaching, for example, teachers get paid less when they work in the EU. They get paid more when they work here, so they want to stay here and work. So you need to understand that people chase.
Okay, so if you're talking about qualifications equivalence,
Yeah.
well, there are directives, that's a source of EU law, that seeks to guarantee equivalence for certain professions.
Yeah.
If you're talking about salaries, that's something very different, because the cost of living, remember, is different in different countries.
Yeah.
But I do understand the point about people choosing the UK because of advantageous wages, for example. Equally, I must also say, if we are having beneficial labour into the UK, jobs which UK citizens don't want, that's a benefit, surely.
Thank you again. Thank you.
You're welcome.